Well, welcome back to a very special edition with an incredibly special guest. It's a joy to be joined yet again by Errol Musk. And what we're doing in this section, we always look at the various report stories around the world and put those into perspective because they always say if you tell a lie, it travels around the world before the truth has got its boots on. Well, that's so true in this diseased information age. So, what I wanted to look at, and basically, Elon is the master at basically commanding those column inches virtually every day. There's a story about him. Let's start off then with politics because US presidential polls, basically Elon Musk has decided to endorse Trump, but his workers are backing Harris. What's your take on that, Errol?
Well, Elon started off in America, supporting the sort of democratic supposed side of things, or modern democratic side. The old democratic side was, in fact, they were the ones who wouldn't abolish slavery, in fact. But the new modern Democrats have, sort of take up the bleeding heart society. And so he, in order to accommodate himself, and as with my other children, the same thing, when they first went to America, they sort of, what's the right word, decried apartheid
Right.
and decried South Africa as a bad thing. And they threw themselves into the democratic pool and tried to be, accepted, you could say, in America, because as a white person coming from South Africa, a white student, you were considered to be some sort of, fleeing sort of Nazi or something like that. And it was hard for them. It was very hard for my daughters and brought them to tears at times. I had them deal with that by telling my daughters to just ask them where the Red Indians are, so they can go and have a look at some of the villages and things, because that'll keep them quiet, because they killed all the Red Indians. So out of 26 million Red Indians, by 1900, there only 1 million left. But at any rate, Elon, as time's gone by in the last period of time, has sort of, I suppose you could say, sort of woken up to the fact that American politics is not quite on the right track. Which brings me to something that I've been thinking about today as well, and that is that, all around the world, we are having countries being invaded by illegals. It's not just in America, it's in Europe, it's all over. So some governing body somewhere, some high society, maybe it's the Masons, maybe it's the Illuminati, I don't know who it is, but anyway, somebody is telling all the governments that you have to let all these other types into your country, no matter what, and you have to actually give them homes and give them whatever. I noticed in England recently, Keir Starmer and them decided that there's going to be no heating allowance for the old people, but they booked 6,000 four-star hotel rooms for people who came over in rubber ducks to England, which
It is incredible. I mean, it's that big thing, and a two-tier
is
Kia,
a bit odd.
and the big thing at the moment, he's getting free gear Kia because there's all these big presents that are given to him on that sort of basis. I mean, you've been involved with politics. The optics on that are not good, not least because he was so critical of Boris Johnson and others in the opposition when he was in power. About they had these wallpaper that they did for Downing
Well,
Street and
obviously
how
getting there,
expensive that
they're
was.
obviously getting their instructions. These governments are getting their instructions. I think you have to be a little bit thick not to realize that Biden, Boris Johnson, and now Starmer and Macron and all of these people have been getting their instructions from somewhere. They're getting their instructions. You have to be a bit thick not to realize that.
And
They're
where do
all
you think they're
getting
getting their
instructions,
instructions from?
and all instructions are the same.
Yeah.
You will let these people from these third world countries into your country en masse. Now, whether this is an idea to regenerate the gene pool of these countries that they're sending all these third world types into, or something, I don't know. Maybe that's the reason, that some central body that is sort of somewhere up there in the sky, somewhere, has decided that we must rejuvenate the gene pool of all of America, Europe, and England. And in the process, we're going to send all these people from these third world countries. Maybe that's the reason. I don't know. But they're clearly all getting their instructions from some central body. So Biden's getting the same instructions as Starmer. Starmer's getting the same instructions as Macron, and so on and so forth. And they're all towing the line. So
So,
you
so
get
which central body do you think that
I
is
don't
then?
know.
You're not
Well, you
sure.
know, I've said I've had people ask me, is it the Freemasons or something, or is it the some hidden body, some central body that that apparently exists? But there can be little doubt about it. When all the governments are doing the same thing, all these separate governments are doing the same thing, you have to conclude that they must be all be getting the same instruction, that you
It,
will allow these people in and you will provide them with accommodation and so forth and so on. And so when you get a person like Starmer, who was, as you say, previously criticizing Boris Johnson, for doing that, as soon as he's in, he gets called to the headmaster's office and he gets told, this is what you're going to do, my boy. And he says, but I was elected on a different thing, on a different basis. And they say, well, you know, this is what's going to happen to you if you don't do what we tell you. And so immediately he just takes up where Boris Johnson left off. I mean,
right.
it's not really what it's a silly thing to say. It's not brain surgery. It's not rocket science to figure this out. And yeah, so anyway, so as far as Elon is concerned, he sort of has come to the realization that there is something like this going on, and that this great country that he moved to, which I told him from when he was a little boy, we must try and go to the United States. Because from a technical point of view, I viewed it from a technical point of view. Everything they did, they wrote all the books, they wrote all the technical information, you know, that I worked with. I mean, we've got to go there because this place is just way ahead of us. And I told them that from when they were little children, all of them. And then, you know, he went there, and now he's finding that this wonderful country that he was able to produce an electric car in large numbers, and was able to build a new rocket launch facility and do all these things in that he was able to do, is faced with potential annihilation by a process of political destruction of some kind. That you know, Elon initially was had a lot of trouble with when he launched the first rocket into space, which, as it happened, was the fourth rocket that he launched.
Right.
And it actually went into orbit with a payload. And it was 5 degrees of arc off track, which is unbelievable. 5 seconds, I beg your pardon. 5
Right.
seconds of arc. 5 degrees is 300 miles.
Right.
5 seconds is a few yards off track, if you understand what I mean.
Yes, yes,
So
no,
it was 5
absolutely.
seconds of arc off track. The government immediately went in and said, "Who, you can only employ Americans to work in this place. No one can work here except Americans. They must be Americans citizens, and we have to give each of you clearance from now on. You can't do this." Obviously, you know, I mean, think about it. You know, some guy in Gloucester launches a rocket into space.
Yeah.
The government's going to be there in a tick, you know.
And
Because you
just
could bring it
extraordinary. I
down
mean,
on,
but it's
you could
those
bring the thing down on
regulations.
Whitehall.
Yeah, no,
Eh?
it's those regulations which Elon was talking about, and it's basically the you know, the food and fisheries people and so on and so
No,
forth.
no, but before that, he was told he has to employ um, uh, only Americans. All have to have a clearance, before he can go on, which he then did. Now,
Right.
recently, he's been told he has to employ illegal immigrants.
He
He
has
has
to
to,
employ illegal immigrants.
yes, he's been told he has to employ illegal immigrants. And he said to them, but the very work that I'm doing means I can't employ people who aren't American citizens and who are. So that's what the change that he's seen.
Right.
So from 2006 or somewhere back there to where he has to only, or everyone has to have a clearance, everyone has to be an American. Now recently he's been told he has to employ illegal immigrants in SpaceX, which he said he's not going to do. So he's realized that the rot is in. I suppose you could put it like that. He's got the idea, wait a minute, the rot is in. You know, he's found, you know, the boat's got dry rot somewhere.
Right, right.
And it's
So
starting to
who's
sink.
telling him then? I mean, in terms
Well,
of
he's
those
figured
results,
it out. He figured it
right?
out
Okay.
with this Biden crowd, with the Obama crowd. Obama being a black who became president, you know, it was like everybody's dream that this would defuse all the antagonism. If we are prepared as white people in America to elect a black president, it shows you we're not anti-black,
Right.
and none of them are. Elon is most definitely not racialistic in any way, and so that didn't happen because it just got worse, even though they'd done that. And then along comes Biden, and it was with Biden that Elon changed his tune. Prior to Biden, they'd realized that I'm supporting Donald Trump. When Donald Trump announced his candidature in 2015, I made it quite clear that this is who you must support. And simply because I knew him and I followed his career, and he's a very accomplished guy. And I also live in South Africa, where we don't have a single government department in South Africa that operates anymore. We don't have any government department that's functional. Right. So you can name it a department. It's not functional. There are no functional government departments left in South Africa.
And why is that? Why is that?
Well, the people, it's all been taken over, let's say, by the black community, and they put people into positions of authority who have no qualifications whatsoever, possibly never even went to school. And so the idea is anybody can do it, and it's all to do with getting a big check at the end of the month. And so all the departments have collapsed in South Africa, all of them. SAA, the airline has collapsed, the electricity system more or less collapsed. They've got a whole lot of foreigners now running it, trying to put it back up again. So South Africa is I've seen it here. So I live here, so I know what it's about. And Elon, of course, has on the side, he's picked up what's happened here, and then you've seen what Biden has started to do in America. And I think the sort of crossing of the line, or whatever you call it, was with Biden in 2021, early 2022. He gathered all the electric car makers of America together at the White House for a week-long Indaba, or what we call it Indaba conference, and he didn't invite Tesla. Tesla had already sold 1 million cars that previous year. Biden introduced GM as the leading electric car manufacturer in America. They produced 26 cars that year, electric cars. They sold one, and he introduced this woman who ran GM as the leading light for electric cars in America, which America is going to have only electric cars by 2035. He ignored Elon. And this was a wake-up call to Elon. It was a shocking wake-up call. He just couldn't believe it. Nobody could believe it. And he couldn't believe that these people were so matter-of-fact and would actually do such a thing, such a blatantly wrong thing, that they would do that. And, Elon is a black and white sort of guy. He's not a gray guy. And so you either do the right thing or you do the wrong thing. There's no I sort of did the right thing with him, and so he started looking at this and started taking note of the things that were being said on Twitter and so on, and it was telling these people at Twitter that SpaceX is bad and Tesla is bad, and he couldn't understand it. So that led him to say, wait a minute, I want to buy this Twitter. As soon as he found out it was being run not by people who were a platform for public speech, but rather it was a what do you call it? One of these things that was actually putting out propaganda day and night, and right. The propaganda was heavily aimed against Elon. In fact, today I received an email from some platform saying to me that I should do my autobiography while I still can, because the blackness that Elon has introduced to the world is going to prevent me from having an autobiography. I mean, Elon introduces blackness to the world. That was today, by the way.
Right.
So, there's a lot of either really stupid people out there, or people who have some sort of other idea of things, what they have in mind. I don't know what that is. Take us back to the Stone Age. I don't know what it is, but it could be something like that. Anyway, the thing is, Elon then started taking more interest in the political scene. He started making anti-government statements in early 22, especially after the Tesla meeting. And I then saw that, and I immediately realized, oh, wait a minute. For the first time, my son is making political statements. And I having been in politics, I contacted him right away, and I said, do you realize you're making political statements? And I said to him, my emails actually are there. I said, you do realize in politics, they don't take away your money, they take away your life.
Right.
They do you in. You know what I mean? In politics, they don't just see you. They don't just see you go down or bankrupt, whatever it is. And so he listened to me, and I also spoke to him about, if you're going to make statements like this, what's your bodyguard situation like? Because you're at the time he was running at about $300 billion, rich, wealthy. I mean, you're a real problem for these people. I mean, Elon's real assets are probably over 500 billion because SpaceX is hugely undervalued, hugely undervalued. So I mean, it's the only launch facility in the world left, and it can do anything. It's hugely undervalued. So when you talk about Elon 251 billion, I mean, his real assets are it's really about 500 billion, if not more.
And predicted to be the first trillionaire.
Yes,
this is what they were saying about Bloomberg.
And so these people, they're not going to play around.
Right.
These people will just monkey with your jet, and you'll be a statistic. You know what I mean? And they've done it to a president, so they're not going to. They've done it to Kennedy, and they got away with it. We all know that. Everybody knows that. So, better wake up. So he did listen, but he went ahead with this Twitter purchase, and of course he was up against it, and they made it incredibly difficult for him. And they realized they made it so difficult for him that if he were to buy it, and the courts and everybody, all these bad so-called independent courts, well, they're not independent, and they made it impossible. They said, well, if you're going to buy it, you're going to have to pay $40 billion. Well, he did pay $40 billion. And I said, if he could have held out, because Twitter was bleeding about $4 million a day at the time, which is about $1 billion a year. So Twitter was bleeding $4 million a day, every single day at the time he took over Twitter. And there's no way they could sustain that. And if he could have held out until April the next year, he would have been able to buy Twitter for about $5 to $7 billion.
Right.
I worked that out and told him, just hold on. But the courts made it impossible for him to hold on. So he said, okay, their approach was he'll never be able to do this. But he did. So he got it for $44 billion, which is ridiculous. It's like buying a house in Whitehall, or in Whitechapel for £20 million or something. It's crazy, but he did it. And so now he's got it. And now it's running at about, the last time I heard, he told me about 600% more than it ever did as Twitter. 600%. In other words, 6 times bigger than it ever was.
Right.
And growing all the time. And so they've got a very big, these people, whoever they are there. They are a hidden organization. They are hidden. Who they are, we don't know. They've managed to keep themselves secret for all these years. They run things behind the scenes. And he realizes he's up against them, and they have not been able to buy him, and take him in as one of their proteges. They haven't, because he's done what he's done on his own. He didn't need them for anything.
Yeah. And that's got to be the thing, doesn't it, Errol? I mean, you've got to turn out if you don't need somebody else. It's got to make sense.
Well, Elon is their biggest existential threat,
right,
to these people. He's the biggest existential threat to them on a sort of everyday basis. Trump probably is the biggest existential threat to them, and they're doing everything they can to, put this hopelessly unqualified woman in as the president of America. She looks like a nice enough girl, but I mean, she hasn't got it up there. And I was quite surprised to see an interview with her on one of the platforms where she was quite clearly drunk, inebriated, talking about, this Kamala Harris talking about what she's going to do, which is rather odd, because what she's going to do, she's been in power for the last 3.5 years. So she's saying, elect me and then you'll see how things will change. Well, you're already there, lady.
She's had 3.5 years, and all these sort of
you're there already.
Salad that you had in the presidential
debates.
Elect me
and you'll see things change.
Yeah.
I mean, so as far as Elon is concerned, his situation is precarious. It's not ideal. And he is faced with a lot of enmity by, unfortunately, a large number of people are ill-informed. They 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 don't understand things, and your average Democrat who is in America. I travel to America a great deal,
Yes.
especially in the Democrat states like Colorado. They've never been anywhere. They've grown up with the proverbial silver spoon in their mouths. All these kids, young people, they don't have the faintest idea of what it is to do without. Uh, you know, I grew up in England as a small boy. We didn't have a bathroom. We had a bath every Saturday in a copper tub in the kitchen.
Right.
We didn't have a fridge. We never heard of a fridge when I was a small boy in England. We had a cool box outside. We, when every time we had any money, my family had any money, not every time, but the people I stayed with at times, we would get paid 2 shillings to rent a bathroom at the city, at the Bristol washing place where you could go and have
Right.
a bath. You pay 2 shillings and you get the bath for sort of half an hour, and you put hot water into it, and everybody stands in a line, and you all jump into it, and in the same water, of course. and,
You probably get dirtier going in than you were coming out, weren't you? It's got
well,
to be.
that's we just had to do it, and
Yeah.
that's how I grew up. And these people in America, they just have no clue about things like that. I mean, they really are all the embodiment of Marie Antoinette. If you can't have bread, well, why don't you buy pastries? Something like that.
Yeah.
They are the most incredibly spoiled. I wouldn't say in a bad way. I think it's wonderful that they are like that. If only the whole world could be like that. It's the most incredibly spoiled bunch of people. And, as a person who reads a bit, I read a bit. And I love H.G. Wells. And if you
Yes.
take his book, The Time Machine, and which tells you about a man who goes into the future, and he discovers that humanity, many hundreds of thousands of years from now, has turned into two types. Those who live on the surface, the Eloi, who are all beautiful and dress beautifully and eat don't do any work at all and simply live this glorious existence. And then you've got the Morlocks who live underground. And these are people who can only come up at night because they can't see in the daytime. But when they do come up at night, they take Eloi and take them down to the bottom in the caves and eat them. They eat the Eloi, you see. So the Eloi, every now and again, notice that one or two of their numbers missing, but they are so happy that it doesn't bother them. And that's one of the themes of the time machine. So in many ways, this population you've got in America today, this youth population, especially in the well-to-do Democrat states, they have no idea of what it is to do without, or to not have just everything you want. I mean, you go into a hotel in England, in the United States, and to a certain extent, I was going to say England doesn't have that. No, England does. You have to pay a lot of money in England for the same thing. And even the cheapest hotels or the cheapest motels in America are just fantastic.
Right.
They've got everything, and you just can't believe it. How do these people do it? I was there a few weeks ago. We did a 1,500-mile trip on the roads. There's no one working on the roads, but the roads are perfect.
Right.
And the roads are covered what we call in engineering a premix. That means they're so smooth that you don't need it's like driving a Rolls Royce all the time. The roads are perfect. Who does this? Who's doing these roads? Who comes out and does this? And this is what their country's made of. And everywhere you go in, you ask for a meal. It's huge. It's much more than you can ever eat.
Right.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They're famous for their size of the balls. But
This is
it's,
how these
it's
people have
interesting,
grown
Errol,
up.
because at a local level, this is the thing that always gets people over here. Is the little potholes and things like that. But you're right. You need to know what's happening at that local level, so people are looked after. But the other thing is, people don't know how lucky they are now, as you talk about growing up
Yeah.
and having this one bath that you share with lots of people. And
Yeah.
this is the reality. And I think we've lost as a society our ability to communicate as well, because the more, I always say, the more devices that we have, the more basically the smart the phones get, the less we get smart, and the more stupid we get as a result, because we're losing that skill of communication. How do we get that back?
Well, I'm not so despondent. I think I look at my 7-year-old, he's computer literate
Right.
at 7 years of age.
Yes.
He's had an iPad for a year.
Right.
He uses that iPad. You say, can he use it? He doesn't use it. He's a lesson. He could give lessons
Right.
in how to use an iPad. So, in many ways, I like the way things are going. I think it's all very well. There is this disparity in the world that is to a certain extent, in a way, maybe it's good being addressed by letting these people from lesser privileged countries into the privileged countries. I mean, England today, the people live far better. I mean, I have relatives there than I'd ever known it was to live in England after the Second World War. I mean, so even England, Germany, everyone lives very, very much better than they've ever done. And I think that's, of course, wonderful. And America being the way it is, and for that matter, the people I know in Brazil live very, very well. There are the countries that somehow are bogged down with gangsters and gangs, and everything just doesn't work for them. And these are the countries that are sending their people into England and Europe and America. And is this some clever plan? I don't know. It's a puzzle. It's a puzzle to me. I mean, as a child in England, I drove a bicycle. I was 11
Right.
from Bristol to Swindon. And I looked at the distance a while back. I remember my saddle kept breaking, but it was 50 miles.
Right.
50 miles I rode in Britain, from Bristol to Swindon. I was 11. And what did I do it for? Because a King George, the something or other green locomotive was going to be there, and I was going to be able to tick it off. I was going to see this thing. I was a train spotter, and so I could tick this off. So off I was to Swindon, and my mom didn't have to say, "Are you going to be okay?" Because on the way, people saw you going, and they'd say, "Well, where are you off to, son?" And you'd say, "I'm going to Swindon." And they'd say, "Have a glass of milk, have a biscuit." Do you understand? I mean, that was England, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and it
We
is,
had no
and
money.
and that's the thing, because nowadays, if you're drowning in excess, you don't appreciate the simple things, and you don't
Well,
need a lot of
nowadays, I
money to
think
have
you're
a great
in
time.
danger in England if you do that. I mean, they're knifing people. These people from the third world countries have introduced uh, dangerous things into the UK, which we never. That was what I was trying to say, that we didn't have when I was 11. I mean, we would go off fishing in buses that would take us miles and miles away to some canal somewhere, where we would go and fish for the day and come back. The buses even had a place at the back of the double decker for your fishing rod to
Right.
go in. There was a fishing rod sort of holder, and your parents didn't have to wonder whether you were going to be abducted or killed or something. In fact, we never had ever, as I said, we never ever had any money. Nobody had any money. I mean, if we had threepence, it was like huge. The one with the hole in the
Yes.
middle, and we would people would see you and they'd say, come on, have it. We'll get you a packet of chips or whatever it was. They were very kind, and so on. So, but you can't do that now. Certainly, you can't do that in this country. In America, it's becoming more and more dangerous to go out. The children have to be escorted more and more because of these introduction of people from countries that sort of have different approaches to life. Yeah, so that's not
Yeah,
very
I mean,
nice.
it's a massive thing. I mean, it's a big discussion during the UK elections, all about immigration and the small boats and Rwanda and how you're going to deal with these sort of things. It's a big issue, obviously in the States as well. It continues to be a big issue for everybody. I think it's what we need to do is work out a sort of rational way of doing it, because you need a certain amount of legal immigrants to make sure that the economy and the jobs that people don't want to do for a lot of the time, and actually it's more likely now that you're getting certain expertise. So you have the best doctors in the world. You've got to make sure that you still get access to that, the best technicians, the best scientists,
Yeah,
and so on and so forth. But it's got to be done in a sort of a realistic way. But it's also about humanity. And there's a great movie called Io Capitano, which gives a different perspective on the illegal immigrants, where basically they're human traffickers, and there's basically people who are abusing the various
yeah.
people in villages who are promised this better life. And along the way, there's murder, there's bribery, there's all sorts of corruption, and it's appalling. It's the people traffickers who we really should target, isn't it?
Can I tell you a funny story? In 2021, my daughter Alexandra, she had her first child. She was having her first child, and we're very close. And she said, "Dad, I want you here." She lives in Austin, in Texas, and she said, "I want you here at the birth," which is, you know, okay. I said, "Why not? I mean, I'd like to do that." So her mother actually had been staying there for a while, so that was all right. Her mother was going to be there, and just before I was about to leave, this was during the COVID pandemic. Biden introduced. They kept saying new strains of this COVID were coming out,
Right.
and something that had come out was called. I forget what it was called. Anyway, some kind of strain had come out, and they said that I they put a blanket ban on December the 8th, 21. They put a blanket ban on anyone with an African passport from entering the United States until further notice. And the baby was due on about the 23rd of just around Christmas. In fact, she was born on the 1st of January. But so I was told I can't go. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? So I looked at these immigrants pouring across the Rio Grande. So I thought, all right, I'll take. I never had the injection. I've never had this injection, and I don't believe in it. And I'm glad I didn't, because a lot of people are suffering from it now. But at any rate, I took a flight. I managed to get a PSA certificate saying I'm clean, and I went off to Germany. I got to Germany, and from Germany I took a flight to Mexico City, and from Mexico City I took a plane to Monterrey, and Monterrey, which is about 120 miles from the border with America, with the United States, I took a bus to a place called Nuevo Laredo,
Right.
which is the Mexican side of Laredo. And when I got there, I arrived at midnight, and I found a stream of refugees who were pouring across the border, and I just joined them, and I walked across the border.
Extraordinary.
I just walked across the border,
And how was that
it was
journey
very
for
easy.
you? Is
Eh?
it too easy? Is that right?
No, I had a visa, and I had an American visa
Right.
that was active, visitor visa. So that helped me, of course. And we weren't over on the other side for very long when we were picked up by Border Patrol, and I just promptly showed them my visa,
Right.
and they were very confused. They didn't know what to make of this. What on earth am I doing? Because I only had a hand baggage, and I was wearing flip flops, a pair of jeans, and it was very warm, and a short sleeve shirt, so I wasn't really dressed or anything. And they didn't know what to do. And I said, by the way, my son makes the Tesla car, and this like totally blew their minds. They didn't know what to do. So the telephone lines were ringing between Laredo, Border Patrol, and someplace in Dallas, and all these things. What do they do with this guy? And that was me, you see. So eventually it was agreed that I can carry on my trip to Austin, you see.
Right.
And this is all in the middle of the night. And so I said, look, I'm really tired. What I prefer, they said they'll drive me. Oh, no, they'll take me at 2 o'clock
Yes.
in the morning. They'll drive me to Austin. We'd like to take you to Austin. I thought, three of these guys in a car with all these, weapons and hand grenades and machine guns and all this in their black uniforms, and me in a car for hours going to, I couldn't take the pressure of all the discussions we were going to have. So I said to them, please take me to a hotel in Laredo for the night. I'm really tired.
Right.
So they took me to a hotel, and they said they'll pick me up in the morning to take me to Austin. And I said, well, could you make it? They'll come at 8. I said, please come at 10. Anyway, as it happened, they came at 8. Tap, tap, tap on the door, and open the door at this lovely hotel in Laredo. And there's all these guys in black, and they're going to take me all the way to Austin. And I said, it just so happens that my daughter's on her way to pick me up.
Perfect.
No, that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case. And they said, all right, as long as you're all right. So, and off they went. So they were really nice. And they were very fascinated by Elon Musk's dad doing this. And, and then some of them asked me if I wouldn't take their email address or give them a place where they could send their resume and all that sort of
there
stuff.
you go.
And anyway, I then took a bus, a Greyhound, to my daughter's to Austin. I didn't worry about them having to come fetch me,
And you made it in time. Did you make it in time, Errol?
Oh yeah, and I made it in time. I arrived on the 23rd of December, and otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do it. So it's a bit, anyway.
23rd of December. It sounds like another Home Alone edition. You've got to get that back in time. Trains, planes, and automobiles, all of that sort of stuff.
Well, I think if you come from Africa, you sort of figure, well, you can try, you can do whatever you can. I mean, look at these blokes getting into rubber ducks and taking off from Cherbourg or somewhere in a rubber duck for England. I would like to do that. No. I've done a lot of sailing on the sea, yachting and so on. I have sailed from Cape Town into the Med. I've crossed the Mediterranean, the Atlantic a couple of times. I would hate to be in the Channel in a rubber duck.
Right. No, really. No, it's treacherous. And what's really tragic is lives are being lost. So there has to be a safe way. There has to be a legal way of doing it. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to do a deeper dive into some of those stories. It's Andrew Eborn here, together with the wonderful Errol Musk. Don't touch that dial.
Thank you.